I'd say the main thing would be to re-find a capacity of re-entering into yourself, which in many ways is simply to re-find your identity. Because if you're always living outside of yourself, where is your identity?
Something has to be discovered and emerged from within, which is why we call our path and practice inner view, the vista from within that's just as vast in the inner space as outer space.
I live on that principle that there is goodness that is there, not sort of a goodness. There is goodness which is there.
He went way beyond what was simply, I would call, the professionality.
Dr. Thomas Francoeur is a Professor Emeritus of McGill University in Montreal, who specialized in counseling and religious education. Through the roles of teacher, counselor, mentor, spiritual director, and retreat leader, Tom first and foremost tends to the care of souls. His guidance has brought thousands of students, clients, and seekers of all kinds into alignment with the best of their human nature.
A couple of days ago, I was reading a suggestion of a list of mantras, and they're lovely. But there was one that really struck me. God is here, as a mantra. God is here. It's easy when we're faced with someone in trouble to dwell on their trouble and their weakness, whereas what is most helpful is to dwell on their strengths, to bring them to ponder again and dwell on the inner strengths that are there. Whenever they mention a point of goodness, which will be real, and that if you are disposed to recognizing it, and then you build on that. You have to find ways to point up how they are sensitive and how their own judgment and impression is reliable. The powers that they have to bring about growth.
And that certainly is one of the things I retain of Tom, his capacity to be with people, listening to people, and by that very fact showing that they are important. Because the first thing that comes to mind when a person is being listened to is that he or she is worth being listened to.
I think one of the things that works well is if they can recognize that there is such a thing as fall and pick yourself up again.
We know very little about relating. We relate still far more by juxtaposition, which isn't relating at all. Those two cups are said to be juxtaposed. One is next to the other. That's not relating. Now, it's very easy for human beings to juxtapose, and it's not at all demanding. And that's why it's so very hard for us to learn to relate. The costliness of loving, the costliness of relating.
If you analyze the pick ourselves up again, that can only be due to the root core goodness, energy. We use the word energy a lot now, and rightly so, but it's that energy that allows us. I knew well the chaplain, a Benedictine monk. His monastery was just 2 miles away from that penitentiary. When he was named there as a young monk as chaplain, he said to the abbot, "I'll go there as chaplain on one condition. I live with those men 24/7, and I don't come back to the monastery." Well, the abbot says, my condition is you come back to the monastery for 2 weeks every year for the retreat. So Father Justin said, all right, I'll agree to that. But he recognized and reverenced in them the goodness that was there. Had it been abused, of course. Had it been deformed, of course. Had it gone astray, of course. And this is the basis of my approach to people who might turn to me for help or might ask me to, travel with them, journey with them. That it's never an impossible situation. The other person comes to us, that's already a gift. We don't seek them out. They come to us, and then we just let things happen. You're heading for the infinite, you're in a relationship, and there's so much awkwardness. There is a lot of awkwardness. And that's why I like the story of Heifetz, who found after all of his practicing and his mastering of the instrument, would at times find his bowing arm awkward. Well, counselors constantly find themselves awkward.
What do you find central in theology that grasps you and demands a following?
Well, you see, it's a very practical thing, really, in the sense of how to live with others, or what's going to be the shape of living, what's going to be the shape of living with others that seems to make sense in terms of what our deepest feelings or our deepest hungers or our deepest needs are, and the needs of others. I think that's a theological question. And if we see it as a psychological one, I think it's important as a psychological question because it fits the larger picture of, the whole person. And theology asks about the whole person. It's not something that gets lost in abstractions. That's bad theology. Good theology really zeroes in on the person.
Well, I guess I have so many different experiences of Dad. Certainly always his being extremely attentive and always present to whatever the particular issue or need was of the moment. Very alert and attentive to every moment.
There's no such thing as a little act. There's no such thing as a little moment. There's no such thing as a little gesture. There's no such thing as the insignificance of a word said or facial expression. It can change a black day into a day of optimism. It can change a sense of death to a sense of life.
The knowledge of his presence, the experience of having somebody who expressed consistent joy and consistent support, so that it was clear, it seemed to be clear to me, the message that I received was, I trust you, you do your thing, And I know that you're going to do your best, and that any decision that you make is going to be fine.
In his earliest years, Tom Francoeur became quietly aware of the nourishing dynamic of personal presence. He found himself drawn to a life offering peace of heart and mind through what he calls being food for others. This thread of insight steadily unfolded, as did the call for him to embody it in life's moment-by-moment flow.
Human nature being as it is, then we're always drawn into the possibility of distrust, the possibility of not forgiving, the possibility of bearing grudges. But when we say human nature being as it is, we have to say now. Human nature as it is. We are grappling with that, and we will continue to grapple with it.
This is the developmental sense of history. There's also the developmental sense of anthropology, where we look at the human person and we ask ourselves, how are we making out? And of course, I know there are many here who have heard me speak before, and they would know that one of my favorite statements is, given the fact that we are merely 1 million years old, we are not doing too badly at all. Now, I would also say that we're not about to be awarded blue ribbons for the art of relating, because we still hurt one another a lot. Nevertheless, we're learning. But we're aware of the fact that we're learning, and we're a little more comfortable with the fact that we are learning, and we don't lose time beating our breast in guilt, but rather we use that time and we use that energy in trying to love more tenderly. Now that is a tremendous movement forward.
Well, Tom, with his, the human race is only 1 million years old. Bit by bit, moment by moment, we will get there.
So we're going to just put your eye drops in. The fine tuning is always there, and I'm certainly at the stage of still attempting to fine tune at the level of insight, at the level of practice, at the level of a feeling of satisfaction that everything's all right. Is the eye sore now?
Yes.
Is your eye sore?
Yes.
But do you think it's maybe helped a little bit?
Oh, yes, I'm sure it will.
Yeah, because I can see that it looks a little more comfortable for you. That's what we want, is for you to feel comfortable. Yeah, well, that's good.
We walked. We always called it walkie-talkie. It's because we walked a lot. And, he didn't have the money anyway to do anything else.
How come every person in life is always gifted with one thing?
Well, that's very, and you're right on there. Everybody has some special gift. You have a gift that nobody else is going to have.
How long does it take to grow up?
Your whole life. Like, I'm not young, you can see I'm not young, but I still think I'm growing up. Every day there's a new discovery, there's something new to do. As long as you have to put your energy into it and you have to think about it. Grow up all the time. It's the optimism which grows out of having confidence in the root strength, having confidence in the potential. as we said to those little children this morning, like every one of them is unique, and there is a greatness that is meant to happen, that is built in to happen, not built in to not happen, but built in to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, yet. It hasn't happened yet.
Like others whose personal journeys serve as guide lives, Francoeur's thread of insight unfolded through some strong early influences. Young Francoeur was influenced by his grandfather, Sander Wittkewitz. Although not explicitly religious, his grandfather embodied the generosity of spirit that now characterizes Francoeur himself.
I did bring along here my violin, which I haven't played for quite some time. James Levine, you know, who conducts the Metropolitan Opera Symphony. What the musicians had to say about him is that he sings along and plays along and recognizes the difficulty of every instrument. Every player hears what's going on. These people who are in relationship with their instrument and with one another is so similar then to a good human relationship. Not as complicated as a good human relationship, because the human heart hasn't yet unfolded.
He's open to all traditions. He's open to persons, to people. One of the things he often says is, I'm so in awe of the way in which people have come into my life.
The book dates back to, many years ago. Every night I find myself trying to remember one or two people who were of great significance to me, who had an impact on me, who were people deceased, people that I was in contact with. There's one particular entry. Here it is. Look at page 21 and read me the top, the very top.
My Little Sweeper, on Victoria Pier, circa 1939-40. Precious, quiet, deep, silent, mysterious gift to me.
Right. I never got to know his name. He never got to know my name. We never talked about family. I didn't know where he lived or anything of the sort. But there was a connection there. There was something that we meant something to each other.
When Tom was 8 and suffering from excruciating migraines, Tom's great-aunt Yvonne took him to see Brother Andre at what is now St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal. It was a 2-minute encounter during which Francoeur was impressed with the substance of Brother Andre's presence. Another turning point in his young life was when he had to choose between 2 prizes at school.
I was 7.5, but there's no doubt in my mind that at that time I made a fundamental option for, and it has never wavered. Would you want me to tell you a little about that? Yes.
Please do, yes.
So we were in grade 1, and in those days, education was very formal. Every month there were exams. Every month there was a report card. The principal of the school would come and read out the results, and we were ranked and so forth and so forth. This particular month he came in, and the principal, and he was calling out the ranks, and I was first in the class. So after he'd called them all out, now he says, I have 2 prizes here. one for the person who comes first, one for the person who comes second. But for the person who comes first, chooses between these two. So he called me up because I had come first, and he said, here are the prizes. And there was a large stick of candy, hard candy, peppermint candy. And there was a picture of Mary holding the child Jesus, a very simple picture. She had a very beautiful face, and the child looked terribly happy, and she was holding the child close, holding, which said a lot to me, close, which said a lot to me, and still does. So anyway, I'm looking at these two, and as a kid of 7, of course, the candy was very, very attractive. But I knew I had to make a choice. And I reached for the candy, but I never touched it, and I withdrew my hand. Then I looked at the picture, and I reached again for the candy and withdrew my hand. Finally, I took the picture, went down to my seat, and cried and cried and cried. But I knew that at that time, I didn't understand, certainly, the depth of the choice I had made. But I knew I had made a choice, and it had come from very, very deep within me.
Yes, we don't talk about it, we just love. That's it.